Ready to go live? Yeah. So we're here. We're live at the moment. It's just Martin and I. We normally put a massive, almost no effort into these things at all. This morning we've been up all night, haven't we? What time do you get to bed? Have you been to bed, Martin, or is this just?
Sorry, I don't know what you're saying.
I love the fact that for that gag, you actually make that much coffee as well. Did you get to bed last night? Did you get to bed last night at all?
Yeah, I went to bed about 3 o'clock and woke up at 4:30. so I've had a grand total of an hour and a half.
Yeah, so me too. So we declared, we were supposed to declare about 4 o'clock, and I think we declared about, I don't know, 4:45. And then by the time you get home and then sit and watch TV, I had about an hour's sleep, and then I'd set the alarm because I've just been on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire for a wash-up call. And then I thought I'll stay awake for this. So I don't know. David might join us, or he might not join us.
Just give me a second. I'm going to strip off live. Sorry, I forgot to
take Beautiful.
There's no other comedy gags apart from I wore a T-shirt with RIP on it. If that.
So it's been an incredible night of national politics, hasn't it? But when you're at election counts for the coffee, buses, and politics team, it's been fairly tragic all round, hasn't it?
No,
because I think for us.
I don't think it has, mate.
Well,
yeah, politics to win and all that stuff. And from that perspective, you could say that. But actually, I think all of us have got something good to take away from this. And as we move forward as people, that's really important. And from my perspective, I've been around for a long time, mate, and I've been around in politics for well over 25 years. I had never seen an independent fight a campaign like you did. You should absolutely hold your head up, mate. It was fantastic.
I'm very, very, very proud because, like I said last night on the speech I didn't write, just after declaration, you have to go and talk to the microphone to a bunch of other party political. What's the point? But like 6 weeks ago, when Rishi Sunak stepped outside Downing Street in the rain, I had two other volunteers. There'd been three of us. So Nigel and Matt and I had a meal about a year ago when we talked about me running for Parliament and said they'd support me. And I'd ummed and ahmed about it for long. So everybody who knew me, including you, Martin, probably knew that I was going to do it eventually. And I was kind of mentally committed to do it for a November campaign or October campaign. But to start from zero, it was shocking for me, and have to build a team of people and deliver 75,000 leaflets and get signs out and wear all of our T-shirts. I've got my T-shirt on because it's like I'm not using this as a political platform anymore. So I'm immensely, immensely proud of all of that. And, being in St. Neots yesterday and having people come up to me and say to me, I voted for you, Stephen. And loads of people contacted me saying I've never, ever voted before, or I've never wanted to vote before. I've voted for once before and it was a mistake, but I voted for you. Is really, really heartwarming.
I had the same thing yesterday. I had such a good vibe yesterday when I was out delivering leaflets and stuff like that. And I was, just putting out some reminder leaflets and stuff yesterday. I think I did 25,000 steps yesterday, even before I got to the town. And alongside that, I spent about 5 hours outside a polling station in the morning and the evening, because there's a thing about sometimes the last thing people see before they go in the polling station and stuff like that. So I chose to do it, and I was getting a fantastic vibe, and I thought I'd just about cracked it. But if you look at the result, there's a few things for me. I had some great conversations last night, including one with the leader of Fenland District Council, and we've agreed to go and talk. And I think that's important. I always talk to people because he knows that I've got things I want to say to him. So from that perspective, it's good. And the fact that Chris has said he'll talk, I think is good as well, because one of my criticisms of the Conservatives in Finland is they're really, really insular. And if you're not part of that Conservative machine, you're nothing. And they did something in the week, actually, a nasty little attack leaflet against me, which is probably what cost me a win, to be fair. Actually, the end result of it might be quite divisive on quite an important issue. but you know, all of that stuff, for me is good. But also, you know, I said I had two ambitions in this campaign. I wanted to win. Yeah, absolutely. But I also wanted, I'm going to say what I want to say here, and because I'm too tired to think of an alternative, but I wanted to put a rocket up people's asses. And I know that I scared people during the week, and that's why they put out that nasty little leaflet that they did. And from that perspective, I'm good, because if it means a few people at Fenland wake up and smell the coffee, then I'll have succeeded.
Yeah, and so those conversations and relationships behind the scenes are quite important for me as well, because my whole platform was, you know, at the start of we had like 9.5 hours of hustings, yeah, which were a brilliant experience. But the start of every one of them, I stopped to say that basically I was, you know, I'm not in favour of political bickering. And then some people would quite often point out during hustings I was putting the boat into Ian Sollum and Anthony Brown. And I think I learnt, you know, during the campaign, I've learnt a lot from having you as my friend as well, as a proud One Nation conservative. Learnt a lot from learning that Anthony Brown wasn't this terrible man that I'd often portrayed him as, but a decent bloke who ran a decent campaign, who were incredibly kind to me behind the scenes. You know what I mean? You expect, you know, you make mistakes as an independent, and they were being supportive, and I have nothing but praise for Anthony and his team in the way they treated me and the campaign they run. Yeah, and I've just learned, because I think too often in the past I have been this rah anti-conservative guy. That's not who I am and who I should be. And I think, you know, going forward, I want to be a proper independent and not just another Tory basher.
Do you remember that night we sat outside that place in St Neots, and I've forgotten the name of it again. Lovely place. Yeah, lovely place. And drank too much beer.
Too much. We were both very pissed walking back to the station, I can remember.
Yeah, that's the one. That's not me at all. And Anthony Brown walked past.
Yeah.
And, you know, I said to you then, you know, I don't know him well, but I have met him and I've had a good chat with him. And I you know, I quite liked him. And I said to you that, you know, I have no issue with Anthony Brown. And it's often the case, especially with One Nationists, you know, they tend to be decent people. You know, because they've got a bit of a heart to them. And Anthony,
and it was hard to watch last night, you know, because on the way into the camp, I met his wife, who is lovely, his Canadian wife. I forget what her name is. Her surname's not Brown, but she was, you know, absolutely lovely to me on the way into the camp. But watching Anthony, he wasn't there from the start, turn up at the count, you know, kept his chin up, sitting in the corner writing his speech, yeah, and seeing, you know, but he jokes he'll be down the job centre on Monday morning. Now, Anthony Brown is going to be fine, yeah, he'll get himself a job. Yeah, it's really sad for him to lose, but to see his team of researchers and people basically losing their job on the night, yeah, that's really hard to watch.
I absolutely agree. I also suspect that Anthony Brown will be back in politics at some point. As a, you know, the thing is, the Conservative Party are on a real low point now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the next election, whether they're likely to win it or not, they certainly will be on the up from today. I hope they will, because it'll be disastrous for the country if they're not. And you know, you would think he fits in the equation somewhere, you know, in that picture.
I'd hope so. I'd hope so. And what really happened, you know, he would have won last night. You sit at the verification counts, and I can see how I will be able to see, but I saw a glimpse last night of how the vote was split across the different polling stations, yeah, and Reform, absolutely, yeah. Anthony Brown's lunch. If you had the Reform vote onto Anthony's vote, he would have had a clear majority. You know, it's not even Reform, is it? It's Nigel Farage's Reform. If Nigel hadn't stood,
it's Nigel Farage Limited, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what's completely destroyed him. And you could see the tone of his campaign change, Anthony's campaign change throughout. You know, from thinking he was going to win to asking people not to vote Reform, and that's outside of Anthony's. You know, he talks about having written 30,000 letters as an MP. Definitely better than the MP that we've just lost, Jonathan Ginogly. And I'm actually quite sad for him, and I was prepared to work with him, as I'm prepared to work with Ian Sollum, who's less of a personality, I think, but it's also very nice to wake up and not have a Conservative MP for the first time ever, not have a Conservative government for a long time. You know, I'm a big fan of you. Became more of a fan of Anthony during the campaign, but it's good time for a change as well. So we've got a fresh set of new MPs, apart from Steve Baker and Daniel Zeichner, I think, in Cambridge and in the Fens. You know, that's a new dawn for the areas too.
Stephen Baker's somebody else.
Stephen Baker, sorry, Steve. What's your MP called? Steve Barclay. Steve Barclay. I'm sorry, it's a long way from here.
I have no truck with Steve either. I have to say, I do have. I mean, the guy who beat me, Guninder, is a decent enough chap as well, and I think he'll do well as a councillor. I'm just afraid of the machine he's walking into, and you know, and what he's walking into, because the Conservative Party are not about serving Fenland; they're about serving the Conservative Party locally. And those two things are very different. You know, I said to him, if you want some advice, be your own man. And whether he listened to that or not, I don't know. But I run them close, and they were really worried. So, you know, it's that Stephen Barclay romped it, but Reform were in second as well. You know, which worries me a bit, because the last time we had county council elections with the right of the country on a high, when UKIP were around, the county really suffered. I mean, that's when I became leader, and I had to deal with a UKIP group that were absolutely awful. I mean, there were some good guys in there, because some of them are now councillors.
What, Simon Bywater used to be guy, now Conservative, somebody who I think is an absolutely brilliant councillor, and I would work with all of the time. So,
well, you have to say that about Simon, because he's an ex-booty as well. So
he could actually kill me, I reckon.
Yeah, quite. But no, absolutely, and so they were great guys, but the good guys tended to drift across to the Conservatives because they didn't like what was sat around them, and Simon was one of those guys. And what I fear is that we're headed into the same next year. I think after that, Reform will implode, because the right-wing parties always do in the UK. And you know, it's what happened to UKIP, it's what happened to the BNP, it's what happened to the Referendum Party. But it's when and how much damage they can do to the Conservative Party before that happens that I think people should be worried about.
And to all of us as well, because I've got county council elections come up in May, and it could be a very different political landscape. I might not get in there as well. I mean, I did, looking at so you can see from the verification count what kind of score you got in different areas, and my vote was abysmal. Most of the night was looking at South Cams boxes, and I was devastated because I was really, really trailing. So near the boxes came in, and I did really, really well, as you'd expect, But the Reform vote across the Neats was really, really high as well, and that's, you know, that's surprising and worrying. But it's democracy, isn't it? And so, you know, I think I've been a good county councillor, but I might be out of my arse.
Can I just say you're still a good county councillor?
Yeah, good. I am. I hope to be anyway. So I hope to be. This has been a massive distraction.
I won't stand for county because it affects me professionally too much. But the other thing for me is, you know, I went into this election having had conversations with the Lib Dems and having had conversations with the Labour Party, who had agreed not to put up a candidate against me, because I wanted to do this proof of concept thing to say, if we work together and sort of do what's happened in Huntingdon, you know, we can start to make a difference and start to make an impact. And the two things, first of all, I think I've made the point that even though I lost and just lost, that proof of concept has been made. I was close enough for us to say, actually, there might be something in this. And I think that's important, especially when we had a Workers' Party guy stand and he got quite a significant number of votes. And if he hadn't stood, I'd have won. And that's not a slight against him. He's perfectly entitled to stand and everything else. And what happened is, because there was only three candidates, a Conservative, me and him, on the ballot paper, I think what happened was a lot of the Labour votes, rather than go to me, which is what I thought would happen, went to him as the Workers' Party candidate. And from that perspective, you know, the conversation we had, if we can just widen it and make it work, we would have done well, because if that hadn't happened, I'd have won. But that's all lessons learned. And I said at the end in my speech, the Conservatives are either going to learn to work with people of different political colours, or we're going to keep doing this.
Yeah, and so on the other side of the county where I am, it's a rainbow, isn't it? Because I've got a Lib Dem MP now. I think I'm not sure who beat Chellasvara. Was it Labour victory? I can't remember. I was so just, and unfortunately, so you lost by 200 votes, which is bad. Yeah, I was probably never going to win. I never admitted that to myself, and I never said, because I wanted to win, and I still thought there was a chance. Yeah. I learned last night. You warned me I would lose my deposit. Phil Rogers said I would lose my deposit. I didn't lose my deposit, but I only just didn't lose my deposit, and so it was a mountain to climb. So me and my ego aside, yeah, and very grateful to the people. That nothing changed. We've got a Lib Dem MP here. The one that makes me really sad, and the person who I really wanted to be an MP, is Alex Boulat, who's our friend. Yeah. Good news for the podcast, yeah, because we're not going to be in Westminster anymore, and hopefully she's going to be coming back on here after her sabbatical. I know she is, because she said to us she wanted to invest in this as well, didn't she? Afterwards, but Alex lost by a handful, or relatively a handful of votes. In Huntingdon, I was desperate for her to win, really, really desperate, because she's a brilliant person and came so close. In John Major's old constituency is a massive achievement, isn't it?
And Alex has made a point about herself, in that campaign as well. And I think from that perspective, she's got a future within the Labour Party, and I think she's proven that as well. And that's a good thing. So for her to come so close. It'd have been great if she'd have won, but for it to have come so close is a credit to her, and actually to David Landon Cole as well.
I was going to say, it's not just Alex; it was Alex and David the whole way before, I think. And I think I'll let them tell their own stories. But Luke Viner, who's also been on here, who was the South Cams Labour candidate, was being very frank about the amount of support they all got. I think, with a bit more support from HQ, Alex, well, what Luke was saying, it's not fair for me to report, those conversations. I'm not sure if they were for public, but I think Luke felt that with a little bit more support from HQ, that Alex could have pushed it across the line.
To be fair to the Labour Party, that must be really hard, because they were stretching themselves so far in terms of the seats they could win. How far do you go?
She got less of the being shoved off the Peterborough thing than lots of the candidates, I think. I'm not really involved in her campaign, but she fought a really, really, really fantastic campaign with the resources she had. So.
And to be fair, the Labour Party pushing resources into Peterborough, if you look at the result in Peterborough, they'll say, that's money well spent.
And it's the end of Paul Bristow as well. So
it's same again. I've known Paul for a long time. I don't dislike him. I don't think some of his politics helped in Peterborough, but given what happened nationally, for him to come so close in that seat, says something. And so I don't. I think he deserves credit for that, and I think he said he wants to stay on and be the candidate next time. So we'll see.
And that's very, very admirable of him to do that.
I mean, he is a Peterborough guy, though. He actually spent a time at the school up the road from me, and his dad was God rest his soul, but his dad was a Conservative the town councillor in Whittlesey as well, and a very nice chap.
So next time for general elections is a long way off, isn't it? It's 5 years, and if I think back that I've only been involved in local politics for 6 years, and it's changed my life, and I'm not the man I was. 5 years is a very long time ago, and when we had that night in Shoe, and I was kind of hinting I might be standing, and you were trying to discourage me, which was, as always, sensible advice from you, and you were concerned that I was trying to do too much too soon, and perhaps I did, and it's for me now looking at, can I improve on 3,000 votes, and can I establish myself across the whole constituency? There's so much work involved in doing that.
As an independent, unless you have this sort of niche, that you can fit into on a local issue or something like that. That's like some of the Gaza candidates have done in this election.
So I've been disconnected because I was at my account and I came back and watched about an hour of BBC. I know that Jeremy Corbyn got in as an independent, but there was 5. I think we've seen 5 independents elected. Are they all on kind of Gaza platforms? Apart from Jeremy, including Jeremy to a certain extent.
Well, yeah, I certainly I can't remember that bit, but I do know that Jonathan Ashworth's seat, he lost to the Conservative, and the reason in I think it might be Leicester South, but I might have got the constituency wrong, but that was a Gaza vote. Basically, he took a huge amount of his vote away and let the Conservative through the middle, and so that that sort of stuff happened. I think that was the one Conservative gain of the night that I've seen so far. And there was a lot of that, and those guys were getting a lot of votes. And I think you need to have that niche. I remember the last time an independent was elected, it was on an NHS. It was a doctor on an NHS ticket. It was in Wyre Forest. You need to have that niche, and that's the thing that. And to run around trying to chase a niche for next time, I don't think is in anybody's.
No, they have to already exist, and I'm not really, I'm not that guy. I'm a local guy I'm interested. I think we put together a really good campaign. Had some really brilliant people behind me, some of whom will remain nameless, I think, who were helping me on the policy stuff. Matt Houghton was one of them, who's been an absolute star for me. I adore the man, but at district council elections 2 years ago, I can't remember how many votes. I think I pulled in 1,300 votes. In a district council ward, of which there's many in St Neots. I've only managed to do 3,000. I've doubled my vote share across the whole constituency, but the voting patterns are so different in a general election, and
that's one of the things.
It's a mountain to climb.
The game changes in a general election because people are focused on the main parties, and the independents sort of drift to the bottom because of it. And I know you weren't at the bottom, and that's worth stressing. But from that perspective, for you to do as well as you did and fight the campaign in the way you did, I think it was fantastic. I did say to somebody. Who shall remain nameless, that I did think you would lose, but I said I think it would be a good thing for you to get it out of your system.
I mean, and I had to. That when it comes down to it,
you did well, by the way.
No, but when you told me that, it's hard because I didn't want to disappoint you as much as anything else, and other people as well. But there's other people involved. I didn't want to disappoint anybody else, but those are not the reasons to do it. The reasons I couldn't have done it, I couldn't have sat in 9.5 hours of hustings and been at the back of the row. I'm so proud of what we achieved. I think between me and the Green candidate, we won all the hustings. I think we were the best candidates. I'm genuinely.
I thought Labour won the St Neots hustings.
Mate, there's stories to be told about that, and I was trying. Well, I tried to shake the Labour candidate's hand afterwards, and I was trying to be, magnanimous and say congratulations. And she gave me a mouthful of abuse and said my campaign was toxic after shaking my hand. And you don't want to hear that stuff when you step down, but I don't want to go there today because that's all done as well. Simon, who's just to comment here. Simon is a former Conservative Party agent, who lives in Great Paxton, and we have phone calls regularly where we abuse each other. But he's been such a lovely supporter of me. He didn't vote for me this time. I know that for sure. He must be gutted as well. He must be gutted that Anthony Brown didn't win. Gutted what's happened. Like you, a One Nation Conservative, I think Simon is, and gutted that what's happened to the brand. And I think, I think. It's a good thing, probably, but it's still hard to swallow.
I'm not gutted about the result tonight. I really am not. This may sound harsh as somebody that was a Conservative Party member for a long, long time, but you're right. The brand is broken, and it needs something like this for it to start the process of fixing again. It really does need that. My fear is, from some of the conversations I had last week, This is not the way a lot of the membership want to go. They want more right. You know, they want to drift further. They think the solution to this election is to go further to the right. The votes are just not there for them to do it. And irrespective of that, morally, it's not the right thing to do either, because the more they do that, the more discompassionate and the less caring about people they become. And you know, that it's just not in anybody's interests. But you know, it may take another leader and another massive failure before they start to fix again. I hope not, but that's that's my guess.
Labour have got a massive majority now, yeah, on not a massively increased vote share as well. It's really interesting the way that's worked out. But they've also got a very big mountain to climb because the country's in a state, and it's not going to be an easy 5 years for them or for anyone else, is it?
No, and the thing I'm fearful of, if I'm honest, is Keir Starmer didn't win because Keir Starmer's a fantastic bloke, which is how Tony Blair won. Keir Starmer won because people wanted the Conservatives out. And, you know, that's why you've got the rise in the alternative parties, Reform doing so well and stuff like that.
And the Lib Dems to a certain extent.
Well, not even to a certain extent. The Lib Dems have had a great night, to be fair. But you know, all the reason for that is because people wanted to vote somewhere that's not the Conservatives, you know, a lot of it. And the reality is that because of that, and because of the fact that I think Keir Starmer's going to have to go on a round of austerity, and I suspect within the next month there's something coming that is basically going to say that. They might say it in a different way, but that's coming. People are going to fall out of love with Keir Starmer very quickly, and that doesn't mean the Conservative Party will be on the up. It means that the two mainstream parties will be parties that people don't love anymore, and then you get fearful for what happens to politics.
Yeah, and I'm all about politics and all having honest conversations. So I hope whatever Labour do is honest, and they can be honest with that instead of kind of dressing it up as something that it isn't. Because I think we just need to have some brutal honesty about the state we're in and what the cost of fixing it is. And that's, you know, one of the disappointing things about the campaign is nobody willing to admit that they're going to even make cuts, borrow more money, or increase taxes, because those are the three options, aren't they?
Absolutely. Well, both parties. You know, the thing that hit home with the Conservatives, I think, in the last week was this thing about the fact that Labour are going to tax you more. But the reality is the tax take under Conservatives was going to go up as well. And you know, Labour should have said it. You know, you've seen the projections for us, but the projections for the Conservative Party are that taxes are going to go up as well. And at the same time, they spin this thing about you know, about income tax, national insurance, VAT, and you know, blah blah blah. When actually what they're basically saying is we're going to raise taxes, but we're going to do it in a way where we try and hide it from you. You know, why not be honest about it and say, actually, we're going to try and keep taxes low, but we're not going to make these pledges because we need to do what's right for the country if we find we need to.
Yeah, and that's, having that honest dialogue, I think, is really, really important. And let's hope. I hope with a supermajority, as it's been called, they have the space to do that. But of course, they've got their probably the biggest opposition is opposition on their own party, isn't it? Which isn't. It's a broad church as well, like the Conservatives' broad church. Yeah. They're going to have a bit of a struggle with some of those people who are very radical and social justice oriented, and if you don't deliver those things and end up taxing people more, it's going to be difficult.
But Keir Starmer and the way he's managed the last few years, and to be fair to him, he's done a fantastic job. You think about what a low they were on under Jeremy Corbyn. You know, he's done a fantastic job, and the reality is a lot of the new MPs will be very loyal to him as a result of that, and there'll be more of his ilk as well because of the way he's managed, and that should help him. My concern is I'm still not sure what it's going to help him do because he hasn't articulated it enough.
No, and that's a big problem. It's a problem with politics, and he's not the same inspirational leader as as Tony Blair was when he was Prime Minister. So difficult times ahead. Lots of people in the chat are saying lots of lovely things about me, which let's just bump my ego. It needs a bit of a bump this morning as well. So I did put the community on the heart of my campaign. I feel just a bit sad this morning because I think I've let people down a bit.
You've let nobody down. You've let absolutely nobody down. Don't you dare do that to yourself. That, yeah, not at all. I'm just trying to work out how I can see the chat because I can't at the moment.
No, but so just there's just loads of things, and I am just overwhelmed by the number of people who are out posting leaflets for me. Yeah. And I went out in town, and I hadn't been out in town because you're busy canvassing around the whole constituency. And I went out in town yesterday and saw the number of signs with my name on, and the number of people coming up to me, and it was genuinely staggering. It really was. And so I'm very proud of my team and the support everybody's given me. I'm just a bit emotional this morning.
I feel the same. For let's be honest. Even for the Labour Party and the Lib Dems to say, actually, Martin, we trust you enough to not put up a candidate, and we like you enough not to put a candidate up. Yeah. That's a lot to me because that's the type of politics I try to engage in is to be inclusive and to listen to everybody, and that meant a lot to me. But the messages I've had from around town, and I just want to say this as well, my wife has been fantastic, and my wife. She's recovering from a broken foot. Okay. And she's walked absolutely miles with me delivering leaflets. And I can't, she's been amazing.
And the same for me. My wife works for district council, so she hasn't been able to do much canvassing campaigning, but given me, and I said it last night, it came out wrong on the stage, but given me the permission, which doesn't mean it's not that I need her permission, but she gives me the space to indulge in these stupid fantasies for 6 weeks, and like while I'm out delivering leaflets every night, 100% occupied by the campaign and not by my family, which I should be. Yeah. And she's doing all the other stuff that lets me do that all the time. I'm very, very grateful.
I'm exactly the same, and my good lady also gives me the space to go out to Germany and be a metalhead, mate. So
we're very lucky, aren't we? Obviously, both we have to be punched above our weights. Because
I have to say, the way I'm getting over the disappointment of last night, and you can't not be disappointed, but the way I'm getting over that disappointment is tomorrow I drive to the airport and I pick my son, my daughter-in-law, and more importantly, my granddaughter up. So that for me.
So a lovely moment for me on the campaign trail was yesterday when I went to. So we drove around because what do you do really? I don't have the resources to do the telling thing and knocking on doors on the final day. So we just drove around the polling stations, talked to people, and talked to the polling clerk. I went to we went to about 10 polling stations, and I went and talked to polling clerks to thank them, and they were all lovely to me. Yeah. We went to Girton and sat outside Girton. Was a man with the yellow rosette, and didn't know him from Adam. Yeah, and it turned out it was. Do you know David Howarth, who used to be Lib Dem MP for Cambridge for 5 years? I think it was 2005, 2010. He was sat outside. Go on.
He was Julian. I've forgotten his surname. That's horrible, terrible. I apologize. Yeah. Julian, but yeah, he was his predecessor, wasn't he?
Yeah, and so he was in Parliament for 5 years, and he sat there for 20 minutes in the most charming way possible, told me what a bloody awful job being an MP was, how much he hated it, how much he despised almost every minute of it, how I was not an idiot for standing, how I would be lucky not to be elected. And that was just such a lovely moment to listen to him. And I'm saying, I wish I'd met you 6 weeks ago because I'll be about £10,000 richer. Yeah, and I'd have this experience. And it's all true. And you told me not to stand and you were right. And if I'd known him, he would have told me as well. And I felt a bit sorry seeing Ian Sollom last night giving up his good job to go to Parliament because it's a bloody hard job, isn't it? And
you know, one of the things that I found disgraceful in this campaign, and to me, arguably the most disgraceful thing of this campaign, even more disgraceful than that bloody awful leaflet that was put out about me, was the Conservative Party attacking Keir Starmer because he was going to set aside time to spend with his kids. I thought it was absolutely disgraceful. And, for me, I wouldn't vote for somebody if I thought that they were going to put their political career ahead of their family.
No,
I really wouldn't. And
no.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was also like so. In reality, it was a fantasy that I could ever win. I get that now, yeah. But when you're in the bubble, you consider what happens if I stand up, and suddenly realizing that I would be in London 3 or 4 days a week, yeah, away from my family, sitting late night as well, was a genuine fear, because like you, the most important thing in my life is my family and my relationship. And what good does a man who wins the whole world lose his soul? That was weighing heavy on my shoulders, because like getting elected, I don't want to damage my relationship. It would have cost me massively financially as well, because I've got a nice cushy little job, doing podcasts and writing blogs for a lovely company. Yeah, all of those things. So it's not easy being elected, and I hope Ian and Ben in Huntingdon and whoever won in Chalish's seat. Yeah. What's the guy who won in Peterborough? What's he called? The young guys? Was it?
Don't ask me to remember.
I don't know, but all of those guys. I mean, aren't they? Huh?
Just remember, I've been up all night as well.
No, me too. I can't remember anybody's name. So Simon, who used to be a parliamentary agent for a Conservative MP, I forget which one. He says being an MP is an awful job. So we've all dodged the bullet this morning. Being a district council is a pretty awful job. Sometimes it's not a job, but it's pretty awful sometimes.
Well, I knew I was in for a fight, but I if I won, and I was in for a hard time if I won, I was actually in for a hard time trying to win. But that's another matter. But I knew that, but I didn't do it for that. I did it because I wanted to make a difference, and I think I've already done that. But it's the nature of the beast. I sat there and I still genuinely think it was the right thing to do. I can't spend all this time like I do working with councils, working with councillors and stuff like that, and feel like I'm looking at a council that needs to be better, knowing that I know what better looks like, and sitting on my arse and doing nothing. That's how I felt about it, and I still feel the same.
And it's like, what's next for me, because I'm clearly not going to be an MP. Yeah, so I've, and I want to concentrate on being best district and best county councillor I can be, but I also want to spend some time in just improving democracy across the region as well, which means getting more independents elected. I look at Fenland and I do see it's ripe for change, in the same way as Huntingdonshire was a couple of years ago or 3 years ago when I first started. When I first started, there was no prospect of me getting elected or being successful at any level. And we've done all that, and I wanted to help out with that as well. And in any other circumstances, I would have been out pounding the streets with you and supporting you. You know that, Martin. I'm it's utterly inspired by our friendship, utterly inspired by you and what you're trying to do as well.
But it's also true that if I hadn't been standing, I'd have been out helping you, I'd have been helping Alex, which for me, not to be out actively helping Conservatives would have been something pretty different.
Yeah.
But I would have done it, and I wanted to still, but I just time didn't allow. But that's the way it is, and my fear for Fenland is it's the same as my fear everywhere, that unless you can drive change from the centre, it will come from somewhere else, because the people in Fenland at some point or another are going to wake up and say, I've had enough of that, I don't want it. And if you can't give them an alternative from the centre, they're going to go off to reform, or whatever replaces reform when that dies. Yeah. I'm trying hard not to swear, but that's the thing for me about Fenland. If you look at what's happened in Huntingdon, and I think even that the next election might struggle if the Conservative Party start to go on the up a little bit, but it's important, because the other thing, one of my dislikes, if you look at my Twitter profile, I talk about one of my dislikes is anything that's close to the extremes of politics, because they just don't work. All they do is satisfy egos, by not being honest with people about issues. And if you look at what the fact checkers have done with what Nigel Farage has said, all the time through this campaign, they've constantly proven that he's been telling mistruths, and that's what the extremes do, because they're sold on these ideologies rather than thinking about the people that are in the middle and the heart of all this stuff. And if my fear is Fenland will go in that direction rather than go, because there's nowhere from the centre, and that's why we've all got to work together.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely willing to do this. Somebody just said this is something like I'd do well as an elected man, and I'd love. Do you know what? I would love to do that job as a local politician. Yeah, I would love Nick Johnson. I love Nick Johnson, but I mean he hasn't had the most successful mayorship. I get that, but like the cost of doing that.
Sorry, I'm going to challenge that. I'm not having that. I challenge it. Nick had a bad start to his mayorship.
Yeah,
100%. But A, I don't think Nick was right for it. Two, he made a choice that I don't think he had actually much choice over, that I think backfired on him. And I think that's the case. He also inherited quite an unstable administration. And I think he's dealt with all that now. And I think Nick is actually a good mayor, and he's starting to deliver things in Cambridgeshire.
Yeah, and I love him as a person. And having been, so I got elected the day before he got elected, and he was at my count. I didn't have anybody. I won by 9 votes, and we had 3 recounts. And Nick and Daniel Laycock, with a Green guy and a Labour guy, were the only people helping me when you got every single Conservative in the room looking at papers. And I never forget that. I mean, I love Nick, and we drove back together, and he was surprised to get elected, and to see him and my other people involved in that campaign having to go into office in what's a big job and actually have absolutely no support from their political parties or anywhere else was a massive thing. Yeah. So, in lots of ways, they were kind of set up to fail.
And Nick will benefit at the moment from the fact that we've got a Labour government, because the Labour government have talked consistently about pushing things down through the mayors. And Andy Burnham was talking about it on Sky earlier on, and just saying that, as mayors, we're ready for it. And, the Labour mayors and stuff like that. And I think Nick will benefit from that because he's got that organisation around him now. And this is part of my issue with Fenland is unless they learn to work better with the mayoralty and stop this harping on about the past, they won't get the best out of him. Fenland should be sitting down now and saying, okay, what are the priorities and the priority issues that the Labour government are going to push through the mayors? What can we do to get things bid ready so that by the time that funding comes through the mayor, we can bid for it and win it? Because actually, the Labour Party will potentially can use the mayoralties to do levelling up plus.
Yeah, and if you look at what's happening at St Neots at the moment, which isn't always bizarrely not possible, we're having £15 million bill spent on which money that came through. Some of that money came through the combined authority because we were bid ready, and and James Palmer's team put together a master plan. And when the government money appeared, we could go for it, and we won it, and we're getting £15 million spent in St Neots, because you go through that process, don't you? And you're ready for when the money is available, and so I absolutely support that.
Yeah.
And so hopefully Nick will get a second term. Yeah, they've changed the rules, so it's first past the post, which will make it even more difficult.
Yeah, but they might change it back again.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I would love to see Nick have a second term. His term is like I would really love that job. I really would. I think I would thrive. Yeah, but. Yeah. So, firstly, I would never ever stand against Nick Johnson.
I've got to say this now. Neither would I. Quite clearly, I really, really like Nick, and I know I wouldn't, and I too would love his job as well, because I think he's I think the mayoralty, there's so much going for it.
Yeah.
But I also hope that Nick uses it to make a case for some sort of political simplification in Cambridgeshire, because it desperately needs that as well.
There's some of that coming on. It's coming up soon, because I think Cambridge City Council are going to start talking about becoming a unitary, which is bizarre because they're too small. Yeah, and I think that's just a council motion. Yeah, but those discussions are happening. We'd all agree that what we've got at the moment doesn't work together. You're a former leader of the county council. Yeah, for me, the mess of district councils, county councils, and combined authorities is a complete mess. one of the models I would like to see is an enhanced mayorship and the districts coming together, because you see what Andy Street did in the Midlands, and see what Andy Burnham's doing. They get together, they work across those political boundaries. Haven't been able to do that in Cambridgeshire so far, but the landscape is changing.
I will say that when James was mayor, that problem existed then as well. I mean, that's a reality. It did, and I sat and watched some of that as well. But it got worse with when Nick came in, and that's one of the things that they've got to put these issues of the past behind them, and they've got to start working with it. We had a bizarre situation last week in Fenland, where Chris couldn't make a meeting about the March area transport study through the combined authority. So sent a deputy along who said no to a £7 million investment in March because he thought Whittlesey should get more and that it should be spread around more, despite the fact that transport study has been absolute years in the making. And I sent some questions to Chris about it, which, to Chris's credit, he replied to. It's that sort of stuff that, and I watched Chris at a town council meeting persuade the town council to write a letter opposing, this is in Whittlesey, by the way, write a letter to the combined authority objecting to congestion charging in Cambridge on the basis that if it happened to Cambridge, it was going to happen in Whittlesey. It's absolute poppycock. And what that was him doing something that suited his political agenda. It was absolutely nothing to do with Whittlesey. And it's that stuff that's just got to end.
Yeah. I agree completely. And that kind of silly politics. I mean, throughout this campaign, I've told people I've served at every level of local politics. It's not entirely true, because I've never, ever been to any combined authority meetings, because the combined authority constitution, or the latest version, excludes independents, and so we can't sit on, unless I was elected as leader of a council, which isn't completely out of the realms of possibility in the future. But all the other boards, they won't let independents stand on proportionality, which is bonkers, considering how many of us there are.
Yeah, but could a leader could. I'm sorry, I'm not.
Only a leader can. So yes, because I think the Peter the first guy, he was the leader for a while, whose name I also forget. He was allowed to sit, but on all the overview and scrutiny stuff, they are basically carved up on political grounds, basically because our independents really a group. But and every single we had independents ruling Peterborough City Council for a while, and we have independents, as the largest group, albeit split in two at the moment, on Huntingdonshire District Council. Independents are here to stay, I hope, well, at least until there's a Tory resurgence. And so we can't represent.
Yeah, what you need to watch about the independents is that the nature of independence will change as the people's political opinions and as the political landscape changes nationally. So what will happen now, Labour in government, is Labour's reputation will start to diminish. And it means that you'll get different people voting for independence, and you'll get different people standing as independents as a result of that. So it does change a little bit, and you'll get a reduction in the number of independents for a little while, and then probably an increase again. That's always happened as a bit of a cycle, to be honest.
We'll see it.
But it's also true that when independents establish themselves as councillors, they've got a huge amount of stickability.
I hope so, because I don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Roy Gerstner here, who, by the way, was fantastic with me in my election campaign as an independent in Whittlesey, and he's got a really good, reputation locally, and it'll take a lot to shift him. And a guy called Peter Bibb actually won as an independent in a town council election yesterday, and me and Peter did a deal where I let him stand for town unopposed as far as independents are concerned, and he agreed not to stand against me for district. So that's also another thing that says that my philosophy has.
Did he get in?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Well done. That's
this is the fifth time he's stood, so he's really persevered as well. So I'll take my hat off to him.
But to answer the salient question here, I do as elected mayor, you have to look at the logistics of that. So with this campaign, which I've funded almost entirely myself, I didn't do any fundraising, although towards the end of the campaign, some very generous friends have chipped in. And I haven't added up my expenses yet. The spending limit for a parliamentary constituency is about 20 grand during the campaign. and I think I've blown about 10 grand of my own money on this. Yeah, so it's an expensive pursuit. Yeah, to try and do that across the mayorship. Yeah, and it comes down, and more than anything else, it comes down to getting leaflets printed and delivered. You can get them delivered if you've got army volunteers, but printing 50,000. Well, I printed 75,000 for this constituency. It's going to cost you six grand off the bat. For the mayorship, you've got it's equivalent of about eight. We've got 8 MPs, I think, including Peter, but I think it's 8 times that. So you're looking at a minimum starting point of like 80 grand just to get your printing done, and you can't do that without serious fundraising. And so for somebody like me to do that, I'd have to be much more of a salesperson than I am, and be fundraising throughout the year. And I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd need some serious backers to be able to do it. And I also. I'm still not convinced that, to be honest, based on the same thinking, you'd win. We had a guy, I can't remember his name, who stood when James won as an independent, who claimed to be a voice of business and a few other things, and by all accounts, quite a nice chap. But he came nowhere.
You'd have to be have some sort of progressive alliance and be a progressive, and I don't think that will ever happen. I really don't. What I think is that the Lib Dems and Labour should cut a deal where they let where the Lib Dems stand aside, let Nick have a second term, which might happen, and then agree that Labour would stand aside the time after, but they won't do those things.
But also do a deal where they have a Lib Dem deputy potentially. That might work as well. But my suspicion is that one of the things the Labour Party will do is move the election back to the second preference system that we had before.
I hope so.
Because that's it doesn't take legislation. That's the minister can do that off their own back. So I suspect that'll happen because it's in Labour's interest. What's also in Labour's interest is to move the voting age down to 16, and I found the Conservative response to that nationally to be shocking.
Yeah, I'm all about that. Really am. I think it would be fantastic.
I'm ambivalent about it because this idea that these guys that at 16 you're old enough to earn a wage is increasingly less so nowadays because they're staying on into education. But I'm not against it. What I found extraordinary was the Conservative Party basically saying that when he reduces the voting age, it'll keep the Conservatives out of power for a generation. That's the Conservatives basically saying, hey guys, we've got nothing for young people. And guess what? We've got no plans to do anything for young people either. And
which is straight up the spots what they were, wasn't it? I think it's who they are with their triple lock plus. It's not about. They're only serving their core demographic, which I think is really disappointing.
But this is what the Conservatives need to do. They need to sit and think, well, rather than just kowtow into that core demographic, of which I'm increasingly part of because I'm getting old, rather than do that, how do we change our base so we've got a much wider appeal? And what do young people want? One of the things they want is more compassionate government. And the Conservative Party offer nothing in that respect. And yet, some of this stuff where we need compassionate government are the issues of our time. And historically, the Conservatives have been great at dealing with the issues of our time. And so, the lack of progress on reforming adult social care is a great example. It's one of the major issues of our time because the way we do adult social care is just becoming less and less affordable. So we change the model. Somebody's got to be brave enough to do it. And, similar with the prison system, the prison system we've got at the moment is horrendous. And the Conservative Party have got to stop kowtowing to these people that want to send everybody that, somebody does something minor, the first shoplifting offence or whatever, hang them and flog them. They've got to start thinking it's not in our interest to stick those people in prison and turn low-level criminals into full-time criminals. It just isn't. And those are really serious issues of our time. Weren't discussed in this election hardly at all, but the Conservatives, could move forward on an agenda to deal with those things, deliver some really great one nationism, but they just don't.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. We've got 5 minutes left. What's next for all of us? Well, I think the good news is that hopefully we'll get Alex back on the podcast again. She took a break for the campaign. Now, if she was an MP, I'd suspect we would have lost her because she would have been too busy doing other things. But we had a little conversation, didn't we, late night, saying we want to really invest in this. Preparing costumes, I end up listening to our own podcast version of this, and I was really impressed by how coherent we all were, and we were talking Cambridgeshire politics at the time, and it was fantastic. And so I love doing this podcast. It's been very.
It's becoming the highlight of my week. To the extent where I'm stopping on the side of the road and doing the podcast from the back of my car. I love doing it as well. I really, really enjoy it. I say what strictly is next for me is A, sleep, B,
I'm going to bed. Yeah.
B, I'm on the BBC all afternoon today. So from 2 till 6, I'm doing little stints through the afternoon, which I'm really looking forward to as well. And then tomorrow I pick up my granddaughter. So that's what's next for me politically. I'll see if another by-election comes up in Whittlesea. I'll have conversations with people. I may not stand, but I certainly will try and coordinate. I will try and do that across the whole of Fenland. But then I'm also going to have some conversations with the leader of Fenland. Hopefully, I can have a conversation with Stephen Barclay as well, and just do things that set Fenland on the right track, because it certainly isn't there now. And Fenland desperately needs it. It just so Fenland have just lost this incinerator decision again, and Fenland Council has spent, I suspect, $100,000 trying to get a judicial review on the decision to approve it, and they've lost it. And that says the fact that they lost even the decision to take it to judicial review says, despite what they've said in their press releases, that there wasn't any foundation for it. And I suspect that was about kowtowing to people to say, we had a good go, but sorry. But there's £100,000 of people's money doing that. And actually, maybe if they'd have been a bit honest earlier on and say, actually, we don't think there's a foundation for this, we've got to suck it. I'm sorry, guys. That's honest politics. They may have taken some flack for it, but it's honest. And it's that sort of stuff that we don't need. And there's also some lessons learned about the attack leaflet that went out against me, which divided Whittlesea on quite a serious issue, and the approach that they took in campaigning against the incinerator where they couldn't work with others. And when I failed today or last night, and I said Conservatives in Fenland have got to learn to start working with people of other political colours. That's a great example of it.
And it's really, really important for our region, because that kind of, as we talked about with the mayorship, that kind of partisan politics is what's held back the combined authority, isn't it? Almost since its beginning. Not only Conservatives, both sides as well, but recently Conservatives, and we need to get past that. And so,
yeah, we do. And there's a few people. It's one of the things. There's a couple of. I want to think about bringing some of that Conservative thinking that we've seen at the combined authority on as guests on this podcast. And I'm wary about that. I'd like to do it, but what I don't want to do is turn it into what I've seen at the combined authority, because this podcast is much better than that. And that's where I'm wary. But I wouldn't be averse to it. It's just got to be that they understand how we're trying to run this podcast and what we're trying to do before we do it. But I think for balance, we need to do it, because although I am blue, I technically I don't have a political colour at the moment, and it's important that we do bring that colour in.
I'm very proud of this, and I'd love to do it, and I'm looking forward to investing, which doesn't necessarily mean financially. Well, we talked about doing that as well, and I think it's a really useful forum. We regularly we're picking up a couple. Me and you just chatting crap for an hour. It's very, very tired. We pick up 200. When Alex is on, sometimes we get up to 800. Yeah, we can really build on this and improve our production values, and that's what I really want to do for me for the next couple of weeks. Yeah, I'm just going to go away from
Huh? Does that mean I have to get rid of this? All this stuff beyond?
No, of course not. I love it. I look at my stupid blinds as well. But I just for me for the next, I'm just going to I need to take some time off.
By the way, do you like the label I've got there so that I remember my name?
Exactly. Well, that helps me as well, Martin, so we can remember who you are.
Sorry, fun fact. Do you know what that's from?
No.
That's from when I appeared on Countdown, mate.
Well, we'll have to have that on, won't we? We'll have that chat another week, and you can tell us about your Countdown experience. I'm gonna go to bed in a minute. I'm gonna move away from social media because, like, the social media,
I just want to say
it's positive. It's overwhelming.
All those people that have watched today, I suspect, are the same sort of people that have stayed up all night watching the election. So
bloody idiots.
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you as well.
But also, I want to go to sleep, but I feel a bit sad that if it had been any other time and I wasn't standing, I would have been so enthralled by this and so excited about the theatre of today. Yeah, and to Keir Starmer get in the car, go down. I don't want to miss all that. So I'm going to try and have a kip now, but look at the timetable of what's happening today, so I can enjoy some of it and enjoy democracy and a new dawn for the country in which we have got a new government, which I think is fantastic and very overdue. Yeah, and I just want to try and enjoy some of that rather than worry about my own campaign. So that's what I'm going to try and do today.
Just don't go away sad, mate. You've done fantastic.
No, I'm all right. I feel great this morning, and yeah, happy to be talking to you. Hopefully, we're going to get Alex back soon as well, and we can invest in this. And I think I've learned a lot as a person. You know, my performance at Hustings got better and better. I've improved as a public speaker. The fear has gone away. Looking forward to speaking in council even more now as well, because I feel like I can talk on anything. Yeah, and I've built relationships and grown as a person and become a bit less of an anti-Tory rah-rah boy. You know, I'm happy about all those things, and so it's definitely been worthwhile. I think I will come to the conclusion later this week. It's been worthwhile, but I'm just exhausted at the moment.
If you think you've come out of it a better person, that in itself is enough, isn't it?
Absolutely. I've elevated myself. I really have. And I need to, because I end up being down in the weeds councillor. I need to be a bit more. I know that's the next stage for me, isn't it? Being a bit more of a champion for my area, not getting down in the weeds of every single council decision, which I do regularly on Facebook. So I've learned to do that a bit, and I've built a great team of people around me who've been fantastic, and I love to bits.
You'd have also developed a network of contacts that'll help you as well. And actually, I've done that as well, to be fair. I've always had contacts in and around. I've actually built a bit more, and that's been good for me as well.
And I know the new MP for St Neots and Mid Cams. You know, we spent quite a lot of time together. Yeah, I can knock on his door, can't I? You know, and I'll be praising him when he does the right thing, and I'll be keeping him honest when he does the bad things. If he does the bad things, give him a chance. Yeah. And so, congratulations to Ian. Congratulations to everybody. Thank you for listening to this. I think we should go to bed. Not together this time, Martin. Let's go to our separate beds and have a bit of a sleep. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to an increasingly less coordinated edition of Coffee, Buses and Politics. Hopefully, Alex will be back next week and we can go back to more of a polished product. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.